Part 207. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2062. Man Bao's eyes lit up, and he was even more anxious to go home. Dr. Zhang, I'll go home first. By the way, you will tell them later from Ji Shitang, and tell them after the Ministry of Household has bought the medicinal materials. Zheng Tai, Zhou Tai, you think too much. We will not take advantage of people's danger by hanging a pot to help the world. Man Bao nodded. Of course I trust you and Master Zheng, but I'm afraid the rest of the Zheng family don't think so. Imperial physician Zheng paused for a while, then covered his stomach and said, Oops, I have some discomfort in my stomach. I have to go back to the Imperial Hospital. Imperial physician Zhou should leave the palace first. Since it's hard to say this kind of thing, it's better to leave the palace later. I happened to check the recorded cases of smallpox treatment in the Taiyuan hospital, and see if there are any prescriptions that can be used. It will soon be over in one night. Man Bao watched him clutching his stomach and slowly turning back to the Imperial Hospital, then shook his head and left the palace. Probably no one in the family expected her to leave the palace today, so no one was waiting outside the palace. After thinking about it, Man Bao walked out along the imperial city. She saw Lu Shangshu's bike frame in the distance, and she shook her head. Then he took Lu Shangshu's frame out of the imperial city. Man Bao and Lu Shangshu sat opposite each other. The old man and the young man looked at each other and sighed. Lu Shangshu asked Zhou Man, is there a cure for the smallpox? Man Baodao, it's useless to drink medicine to prevent and cure it. It is spread by evil things, and it can be spread by droplets and contact, so people in the family should go out less, wash things clean. Not only the master, but also the water that the servants drink should be boiled. After use, pay attention to cleanliness inside and outside the house, and most of the paths of infection are cut off here. The remaining half is up to people's hearts. The smallpox evil thing is not a tall monster beast, it can be seen with the naked eye, so there will always be mistakes. Man Bao thought for a while, and said after a while, but the nose and mouth should be the most important, and then the bare hands and feet. Maybe your family can find a piece of cloth, preferably a cotton cloth to cover the nose and mouth, and cover a few more layers. That's it? Lu Shangshu, what's the matter with wearing a mask? Cover up and think he can't see people? In the end, Man Bao gave him a recipe. This is not a recipe for preventing smallpox, it is a recipe for treating smallpox, but no one knows how effective it is. Lu Shangshu wants me to write one for you. In fact, she didn't think he needed it. If their family really had smallpox, it would not be difficult to go directly to the hospital to ask for a prescription, even if they couldn't hire a doctor from the hospital. But Lu Shangshu was still very happy to accept it, and then sent the person to Zhou's house before returning to Liu's house. It was getting dark by now. Man Bao patted the door with the last bit of light. The doorman opened the door and was shocked when he saw Zhou Man coming back. Seeing that there was only her outside, neither guards nor horses, he felt distressed immediately. Miss Man is back, Miss Man is back. Saturday Lang and the others lived in the first yard, entering the yard from the side door. They were the first to hear the shouts. Old Zhutu and the others sat in the main room after they had eaten and hurried out when they heard the sound. Zhou Liru ran the fastest, and ran to the front in a flash, nervous and deliberately lowering his voice, and asked, Little aunt, little uncle, did they say there is a plague outside? Do you want it? Old Zhutu and Qianxi were also anxious. They have never seen the plague in their entire lives, but have heard of it. Not to mention, when the Qinhui Weir burst its embankment, there was a plague in some places. At that time, some people who died and those who were washed away by the water fought together. I heard from people who fled to their county town that the person died. It was one piece at a time, and it was very uncomfortable before death. I was hungry but vomited and pulled. When the blood came out, the person immediately disappeared. The plague is as terrible as the flood, and even more terrible than the flood. In the event of a flood, you can still survive by hiding in a high place, but what should you do in the event of a plague? Before Man Bao came back, Lao Zhou asked Jianxi, would you like to go to the mountain to pay homage to Lord Tianzun? When Man Bao came back, he directly rejected it. She said, don't go out at home recently, eldest brother, winter wheat has also been planted in Pu village, so don't go out, and occasionally go to the restaurant to help, don't go to too lively places. Man Bao warned here, and over there Bai Shan and the others hurried over when they got the news. Seeing that the three brothers, including Mrs. Lu and Mr. Zhuang were helping them, she simply repeated the precautions, then looked at Bai Dalan and said, Senior brother Bai, don't go back to Changqing Lane recently. Bring your sister-in-law and nephew to live here, and the servants try not to go out. Are you going to Xiaohu? Bai Shan interrupted her and asked. Man Bao sighed and nodded at him. Before the first few of the old Zhou could be surprised, Bai Shan said calmly, I'll go with you. Bai Erlang opened his mouth wide, looked at Man Bao, then looked at Bai Shan, and finally clenched his teeth and stomped his feet. I'll go too. Bai Dalan grabbed him, Bai Erlang hissed, and immediately hid behind Mr. Zhuang. Mr. Zhuang frowned, the three of you have never had acne. Man Bao was also apprehensive, and said to Bai Shan, you allow me to think about it. She had to ask teacher Mo and Keek. Bai Shan looked at Man Bao quietly, thinking she wanted to ask Uncle Zhou, and nodded after a while. The old Zhou family was naturally unwilling to let Man Bao go, but Man Bao said, Father, Mother, this is the assignment from the Thai hospital. The old Zhutu was speechless. He didn't have too much consciousness, but he knew a truth. After serving the emperor's family's meal, he had to do things for the emperor's family responsibly. What's more, saving people is a matter of great merit. Old Zhou Tiou was discouraged and said to Jianxi, let's prepare luggage for the child. Mrs. Lu also sighed, although Man Bao has not yet agreed to let Bai Shan go, but based on her understanding of the two children, Shan Bao will definitely go, and Man Bao will most likely not be able to stop him. So when I got home, I also said to the Zheng family, let's pack things for Shan Bao too. Zheng Shi couldn't help but wipe away her tears, but she didn't say anything against it. Mrs. Lu clapped her hand and sighed, that's how children grow up. When people grow up, their ideas become bigger. After all, it's their life. We shouldn't be too involved. My daughter-in-law understands that she is worried. I know, I'm worried too, but I think Man Bao is an imperial physician, and Shan Bao has always been healthy, so he should be fine. Zheng Shi remembered along this line of thought, Erlang is in good health, but Man Bao has been in poor health since he was a child. He has been rounder and healthier over the years. I'm afraid he is more likely to get sick than Shan Bao and Erlang. That's the truth, Mrs. Lu sighed. Unfortunately, she is an imperial physician. This is her duty and she cannot escape. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 2063. Man Bao quickly took 2 mouthfuls of rice, then went back to the room on the pretext of finding a prescription, and then went straight into the teaching room without washing up. Teacher Mo was checking her homework for the previous 2 days online. When she saw that she was online, she checked the time, and after a moment of humiliation, she smiled and said, I'm online 20 minutes earlier than yesterday. Man Bao said, Mr. Mo, we have a plague here, do you know about smallpox? Teacher Mo's expression became positive, smallpox? This infectious disease has been eliminated in ancient times. By the way, the time node in your place is still early, in ancient times. In ancient times when there was no vaccine. The disease that has been eliminated, that is, can be treated in the future, Man Bao asked with bright eyes, how to treat this disease. Teacher Mo frowned and said, I took related courses when I was in the 12th grade, but I only studied history, and didn't study it in depth at all. After all, it is a virus that has been completely eliminated. In the past, there were still research institutes that kept the smallpox native virus, but after human migration, this kind of thing was destroyed on the way of migration. So now this thing is just a piece of medical history for them. But he still remembers how to treat it. Until it was eliminated, there was no definite prescription and method. Only through isolation and treatment, the human body can heal itself and develop immune resistance. The reason why humans can eliminate it is because of vaccination. Vaccines. So that people who are not infected will not be reinfected, so that the virus can be completely isolated from regrowth and spread, even if it is eliminated. Manbao asked, "Then do you have a vaccine?" "I'm going to the epidemic area, but I haven't had acne." "Is there a vaccine specifically for smallpox?" Teacher Mo said. "No." Manbao didn't have time to be disappointed and listen to him, "But we have several comprehensive vaccines. I don't have data on smallpox virus, so I'm not sure which one is effective. You have to give me the smallpox vaccine." Manbao was refreshed and thought about it. "I don't have it now. I have to go to Xiaohu. How long will it take you to determine the data after you get the virus?" "Soon, one day will be enough." Manbao breathed a sigh of relief. Teacher Mo said with a smile, "Also, even if we don't have a cure for smallpox now, it doesn't mean that there is no cure after we get the virus data. Medicine was not so developed when the virus was destroyed. Now times are different, maybe there are medicines that can work now, but not necessarily." Manbao pondered for a moment and then asked, "Mr. Mo, do you like the smallpox virus?" Teacher Mo, "I am not very interested in this myself, but this is also a disease. I am still very interested in the data of this virus and the pulse of infection, but the research fee is very fast, you give data can only offset some of those costs." The two masters and apprentices have always had a tacit understanding in this regard. However, Mr. Mo also felt sorry for the students, so he said, "I went back and asked a few more colleagues in the school. They may be interested. They have research institutes. If they are willing to participate in the research, the drug may be released faster. Maybe we are lucky, we just have drugs to control the smallpox virus, so we don't need to spend a lot of money on research." Manbao expressed his understanding, and then asked, "Then can I trade medicines with you directly?" Without waiting for Teacher Mo's reply, Keek said, "No." Mr. Mo also heard it, and paused before saying, "This kind of thing is too high-tech. If you use a lot of it, it will definitely not work. If you use a low amount, I can apply to upload it as a teaching material." Manbao understood, and turned to please Keek, "Can I buy it in the mall?" Keek searched for it and said, "It depends on what kind of medicine you need. Anything in the mall is fine, but if the quality is concerned, it is recommended to use the medicine produced by the encyclopedia." Teacher Mo frowned and thought for a while, and said to Manbao, "The encyclopedia is more expensive than the shopping mall, but it has two advantages. First, it is directly produced by the Biological Research Institute in the encyclopedia, and the quality is higher. It is better than the ones in the mall, and the after-sales service is also good. Second, the varieties are relatively complete, some medicines are enhanced versions, or in other words, the medicines in the encyclopedia are normal versions, while those in the mall are inferior, and the efficacy is even worse." Manbao thought of something and turned his head to look at Keek. "Keek, the medicine for my mother." Keek said, "The encyclopedia is about 30% more expensive than the mall. Can you afford it at the time?" Manbao thought that she had worked hard for many years to save the points to buy her potion. Manbao couldn't help but glanced at his total points again, and he was relieved to see that there were still quite a few. In the past 2 years, she has occasionally made money, and Ji Shitang will occasionally send her some raw medicinal materials, mainly because her reputation has gone out. Some herbal traders knew that Zhou Man liked live herbs, so they dug them up and put them in a pot and sent them to her, not for money, but to please her. Man Bao himself was quite happy. Then they would look for ways to concoct medicinal materials in the encyclopedia, and occasionally give them one or two. She herself is not very good at concocting, but those herbal medicine dealers do this, and it will take a while to get the recipe, so more people like to send her some fresh herbs, and some are not easy to rectify. If the plant is given, the branches will be cut and the branches will be sent with water or soil support. As long as it is still green in her hands, she can include it. Even if some have already been included, she will see the value and put it on the forum to sell. There will always be points income, and occasionally buy some flowers in the past 2 years. Hastily and books, she has nothing else to pay except for the credits for some courses. The total points accumulated are quite a lot. After discussing with teacher Mo, Man Bao did not go out, but went directly to the encyclopedia to find records and prescriptions about smallpox. Mr. Mo knows more entries than she does. He entered one by one and bought more than 20 books in a short time. He directly looked for the catalog, circled the relevant catalog with a pen, and then handed the book to Man Bao. You should read these books first, and I will also read them here, and then go to other research institutes to see if you can find more related ancient recipes. Man Bao nodded again and again, looking at so many books with satisfaction. So many books, there must be a way, right? But she opened the directory and was a little confused when she found the content. There are very few records about smallpox, and there may be only 2 or 3 pages of smallpox in a book as thick as 2 palms. And Mr. Mo's records of that era are not the same as theirs. 1.5 of the 3 pages are about the history and causes of smallpox, and the remaining 1.5 are about the symptoms of smallpox. Half of it is about prevention and treatment, and most of them are about prevention and no cure. Prevention is also very simple, the ancients were all vaccinated. And among the 20 or so books, the content of 3 or 4 of the 7 or 8 books that Man Bao has flipped through at a glance and 10 lines is similar. Man Bao. Although he was aggrieved, he still read it seriously, for fear of missing something. Tomorrow is a new month, and it will be a new beginning. Guess there will be more updates tomorrow. Ha ha ha, see you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2064. Man Bao got up from the bed holding his sore neck, looked at the book he was holding in his hand, and put it into the space simply, and then yawned and opened the door. Zhou Liru had already washed up and was carrying a medical book in the yard to recite the prescription. When he turned his head and saw my aunt, he was stunned for a moment. Little aunt, why are you still wearing yesterday's clothes? Why are you so wrinkled? Zhou Liru's eyes fell on the little aunt's head. After a moment of silence, he asked, Little aunt, you won't sleep all night, will you? Don't you always say that staying up late is not good when you are with shopkeeper Zhengda and the others? Why did you do it when you were alone? Man Bao then reached out and touched his head. He felt that he was probably a little embarrassed at the moment, so he said, Li, are you help me make a basin like water, I'll take a shower first. After a pause, he said, I didn't stay up all night, but I still slept. You can't tell my parents. Zhou Liru stared at the aunt's face, nodded after a while, and obediently went to get hot water for her. After washing and changing clothes, Man Bao went to have breakfast with his family. Because she told her family not to go out, Zhou Dalan and Xiao Jian went to the restaurant with Saturday Lang early this morning. The others were at home helping Fang and the others to cut the medicine and make the ointment. While eating breakfast, Man Bao smelled the scent of medicine lingering on the tip of his nose and said, "Dad, we still have to prepare some medicinal materials at home, just in case. I will issue a prescription for someone to go to another pharmacy to get medicine, and then turn around. If the medicine in the capital is expensive, just ask a doctor to prescribe the medicine at home." Although he has a lot of medicinal herbs in his house, this kind of person has prepared a lot of medicinal herbs before he is sick. Old Zhutu has not done it before, and it is strange for a while. Isn't this cursed to be sick? I can't wait. If someone is sick, then ask a doctor? And there may not be anyone in our family who is sick. Man Bao said, "This is just in case. Each family will prepare some medicinal materials, just like preparing food." She said, "Anyway, most of the medicinal materials are commonly used. If you don't need them this time, you can use them in the future. When you go to buy medicine, let them pack them separately, and don't mix them up." Mrs. Lu understands this very well. As soon as she got the medicine list, she found 4 servants to go to each pharmacy to get the medicine. Old Zhutu could only give out his own share of money. Man Bao specially instructed, "Don't report my name, and don't report the name on the house. Come back after you buy the medicine." When she came back, she asked about the price of the drug. Sure enough, 2 drugstores have raised their prices today, not a lot, but it can be seen. Bai Shan also glanced at it and said, "The news should come out today and tomorrow. Brother Yang's book is not a secret. But it will take some time for the public to know about it." Man Bao nodded, "The court will also make arrangements by then." Man Bao turned around and went back to the house to continue reading medical books, while Bai Shan went to arrange travel. Man Bao quickly flipped through the catalog circled by Teacher Mo, followed the catalog to find the content and swiped it 10 lines at a time. As long as he found the content that he had read, he put it aside. This was very fast, but she turned it over in half an hour. 4 books. Man Bao flipped through the book again, followed the catalog to find it, and when he saw the contents above, he couldn't help sitting up. Inoculation. Man Bao immediately took the book and sat down. He buckled the book down, spread the paper and poured water. When he touched the ink stick, he brushed the ink with one hand, and turned the book over with the other to continue reading. After she went through the content with a single glance and 10 lines, the ink was also ground out. She immediately dipped in the ink and read the content of the book carefully, while writing it down with pen and ink. When Bai Shan came over, she had already opened the 8th book, and there was a lot of paper on the table. 9 times out of 10, it was all about the method of vaccination, but there were not 2 ways to treat smallpox while sick. Bai Shan knocked on the door. Man Bao subconsciously wanted to hide the book. He was relieved when he saw it. He put the book closed on his lap and put it on the table. "Are you all packed?" Bai Shan glanced at the mess of books and papers on the desk, and said with a smile, "So you promised us to follow." Man Bao nodded. He stood for a moment, and seeing that she had no plans to accept the book again, he took a few steps forward, glanced at the book on her case, flipped through the book, and asked, "He gave it to you?" Man Bao paused and nodded. Bai Shan was very curious. "Can't my father-in-law give you the recipe directly? Why should I show you the whole book?" Man Bao continued to memorize while lowering his head, because he also doesn't know how to prevent smallpox. Naturally he can't tell me directly what he hasn't learned. When Bai Shan heard this, he was amazed, and at the same time yearned for it. "It turns out, that we also have to learn. I don't know if we will be like my father-in-law in 100 years, and we will still walk through the Nahi Bridge unknowingly and reincarnate like my father. Go." After thinking about it, Man Bao said, "It should be the same as your father." Bai Shan wasn't too disappointed. He nodded, looked at the book on the case, rolled up his sleeves and said, "I'll help you." Man Bao couldn't ask for anything. She was looking for too much by herself. She taught him, "The content of some books is repetitive. I just need to prevent and treat, and ignore others. Bai Shan understood, moved a chair to sit across from her, packed the books on the table and put them on the side, then spread out the paper and took a book to open. Bai Shan's luck is even better than Man Bao's. When he opened the first book, he remembered 3 prescriptions for treating smallpox, but unfortunately he could not verify whether it was useful or not. Anyway, after reading it, he felt that 2 of the prescriptions were a bit ridiculous. It is called to cover the whole body with honey. Can it really cure smallpox? He glanced at Man Bao and felt that such a matter should be left to the doctor's judgment, so he reached out and took a pen from the pen holder, dipped it in ink and began to record it. The room was quiet for a while, only the sound of the 2 of them constantly turning the pages and writing. When Bai Erlang packed his luggage and went to say goodbye to his little nephew Yi for a while, he came over and saw the scene where the 2 were facing each other and turning the book. He scratched his head, but still didn't want to read the writing, so he turned and left, and he went to prepare some things he wanted out of the house. Xiaohu is so cold, maybe they should bring a few more clothes, including more cloaks, shoes and socks. It wasn't long after Cheng gave birth to her son. She originally had a twin confinement in her own house in Changqing Lane, but the mother and son were taken to Zhou's house by Bai Dalan early this morning. I heard that there was a plague outside. It should be a long time. Their family of 3 had to live here for a while. At this time, she was handing the baby over to the nanny, and she was watching the servant who was serving Bai Erlang to collect things for him. When she saw him coming, she smiled and said, "Second uncle, I have packed all the luggage, you see. What else is there to add? Happy National Day. Farmer's Blessed Girl." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2065. "Thank you, sister-in-law." Bai Erlang glanced at it and said, "Bring some more shoes, socks, and a coat. I'm afraid it will be cold in Xiaohu, so I'll talk to my cousin again." How can he say that Mrs. Lu has already thought about it? She not only prepared 2 sets for Bai Shanduo, but also prepared some for Bai Erlang and Man Baoduo, especially shoes and socks. All kinds of shoes and socks are enough. It's half a suitcase, which takes up more space than the clothes I usually wear. Knowing that you will not be happy in Xiaohu, I am afraid that you will have to go to the countryside. It must be snowing heavily there. If it is inconvenient for the carriage and horses to walk, it will definitely cost you shoes and socks. Bring some more. If you get wet, just replace it in time. Many diseases start from the soles of the feet. Bai Erlang smiled and said, "My cousin has also become a doctor now." Mrs. Lu smiled and said, "I usually listen to Man Bao talking about the way of health preservation. It's hard to know if you don't know." She also prepared a lot of shoes and socks for Man Bao. When she put the things she was going to prepare into the box and let her daughters-in-law carry them to Man Bao's room to continue to pack up, she saw sitting behind the screen facing each other. Sitting, Man Bao and Bai Shan, who were looking down at the book, were seriously flipping through something. She stood and watched for a while, then turned back to let Xiao Qian and others relax, and then let Fang and others go out, leaving only Xiao Qian to clean up with Man Bao. Man Bao was reminded by Keek, looked up and saw that it was his mother and sister-in-law. They didn't come, so he lowered his head and continued. Qian and Xiao Qian packed Man Bao's luggage, and then Xiao Qian went to the kitchen to prepare the food for their departure the day after. Sitting on the other side of the screen, Mrs. Qian watched the 2 children bury their heads in writing. Even for lunch, they only ate 2 cakes from the kitchen. They were so busy that they stopped writing when the lights were on, and slowly twisted their necks. "Get up." Qian, who had been sitting the whole time, seemed to have just regained his senses, got up and walked over. Man Bao, who had forgotten her mother, was taken aback when he saw Qian's sudden appearance at the screen. Seeing Man Bao caressing her chest and looking at her with a frightened expression, Qian knew that she was frightened, and she hurriedly stepped forward to comfort him. "You child, What are you afraid of in your own home? Not afraid, not afraid, Tianzun is not strange, we are full of treasures and obedient. Reassures her like a child. Man Bao exhaled and said, Mother, I'm fine. She felt that she was quite courageous. In fact, Bai Shan was also taken aback. He wanted to hold Man Bao's hand just now, but he was too close to hold it. But he turned his back to Qianxi, and when she came up, he had already restrained his expression, so Qianxi did not know that he was also frightened. On the other hand, when Man Bao went out to dinner with him, he asked him quietly, would you like to cook a bowl of soothing soup for you? Apparently she had just seen him frightened. Bai Shan, no, I'll keep it for you to drink. Man Bao smiled and said, I don't have to, I'm too bold. We had already had dinner at home. In fact, Zhou Liru had called them before, but they were so absorbed that they didn't wake up. So now there are only 2 people and Qianxi who have not eaten. So when the 3 of them were eating, everyone sat on the side and watched them, mainly watching Man Bao and Bai Shan. Man Bao was stared at a lot, but she never had the chance to be stared at by a large group of people to eat dinner, so she felt a little uncomfortable. Dad, if you have anything, just talk. Old Joe was fine, just looked at her. Mr. Zhuang smiled and said, Master can't go with you this time, so I have a few things to tell you. You can eat, don't stand up, and let Erlang listen carefully on your behalf. So Bai Erlang, who was already sitting on the chair, stood up again and listened to Mr. Zhuang's admonition with a clever face. Man Bao and Bai Shan also put up their ears and listened, but the movements of their hands were not slow, and they quickly ate their fill. Mr. Zhuang's words were just finished, so the 2 continued to go back and read the book. By the time Bai Erlang rushed to the back of Man Bao's room, she had already put away all the books on the table and put them on the bookshelf, and then went to see what they wrote down. Bai Shan is giving her points, and all the acne-related issues will be put together for the time being. He discussed with Man Bao, and it can't be formed immediately, so don't worry about it for the time being, and find a way to treat smallpox first. Man Bao finally got 6 pieces of paper. She looked carefully, and Bai Shan said, I think some methods are too simple and outrageous, and I'm afraid they won't work. Man Baodao, smallpox is different from other diseases, each person's constitution is different, and the recipes used are also different. Like these 2, it is recorded in Ji Hong's recipe for rescue the soldier. I have seen too many the cases recorded in the hospital are still useful, but the success rate is not very high. 10 people use this formula, and only 2 people may survive. And the pits cannot be removed. Bai Shan took it and looked at it, and Man Bao sighed. In the beginning, smallpox was called captive sore, because it was introduced by soldiers who were prisoners of war in the Han Dynasty, or later Chenin got captive sore, with pock marks on his face, and wrote poems by himself. If the sky is not right, apply face and make flowers. That's why smallpox is commonly known as smallpox. I still want to improve the success rate of some cures, and at the same time try not to leave pock marks on people's faces. Because in Man Bao's view, there are still acne marks on his face and body, but he is still sick. She continued to look at other prescriptions, and shook her head after a while. These prescriptions were not very good, and they were not comparable to the prescriptions given by the imperial physicians after the diagnosis of the disease when they held a meeting in the imperial hospital yesterday. She put down the recipe in her hand and said to Bai Shan, go back and rest, I have to go to the palace again tomorrow. Bai Shan got up and said, you also rest early. I have to go to see Brother Tang tomorrow. There was no need for them to look for it at all. Early the next morning, Tang He came to the door before Man Bao had time to go out. The 3 sat opposite each other. Tang He would ask the long attendant to hand over the things to them, and said, I gave this to Changbo, you can bring it for me. Man Bao responded, and then the study was quiet. After a while, Tang He sighed, you guys take care. Bai Shan and Man Bao responded. Man Bao looked at Bai Shan, and Bai Shan nodded slightly to her. Man Bao got up and said, "Brother, let's talk, I have to go to the palace." Tang He nodded, and after Man Bao left, he looked at Bai Shan, and the two closed the door and started a secret conversation. Xiaozu's situation is not good. No, it should be said that Yang Hesha's situation is not good. The reason why he was able to block Xiaozu was because of the following crimes: surrounded the governor's mansion, and overstepped the orders given by the officials of Xiaozu. Now not only ordinary people are imprisoned in the city, but also large and small officials, gentry, and wealthy businessmen in Xiaozu. If Xiaozu can survive safety, Yang Heshu will have a lot of hatred in Xiaozu. If he can't survive safety, then Yang Heshu's life will be over. Moreover, his family of 3 are all in Xiaozu. Tang He is only worried now, he is alone. If he gets angry, I'm afraid he won't be able to save his family. People's psychology is so dark. Tang He is the best at pushing cases. He has been thinking since he received the news, if he is those people in Xiaozu, he will definitely think that if Yang Changbo's family is also infected, he can still be banned. Doesn't the city let people go out for help? So Tang He whispered, if you arrive in Xiaozu, the top priority is to take Kui's mother and son out of the county government office, or people from the Taiyuan hospital. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival to everyone. The next chapter is around 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2066. Seeing Man Bao entering the palace, Imperial Physician Xiao, who also stayed up for most of the night, looked up from the pile of documents. He looked left and right, and seeing that there were not too many people in the Imperial Hospital, he beckoned and called Man Bao to his office. He took out a booklet, opened it, took out a piece of paper and gave it to her. This is the prescription given by Imperial Physician Lu yesterday. Man Bao took it. Seeing that the above is quite detailed, there are prescriptions for internal use and external use. This is much better than the recipe she found out after working all day and night yesterday. Man Bao was so surprised that he quickly looked at it. Imperial Physician Xiao poured himself another cup of tea, took a sip, and said, during the later Wei dynasty, the war in Jinzhou, coupled with famine, was very chaotic anyway. Today, the Wei army came over, but tomorrow it was taken over by the northern Han. The dead were layered on top of each other, and then there was smallpox. The Lu family was a famous doctor in Jinzhou at that time, and this recipe was compiled using the names of people. Not to mention the records of the Lu family, the official side said that the people who were born with smallpox later used the medicine of the Lu family, and 6 or 7 out of 10 were able to live. Man Bao squeezed the prescription tightly. This is an excellent prescription. Yes, among the prescriptions we can find so far, this is the only one with such a cure rate. For the others, because the patients are different, it is not bad to have 1 or 2 alive out of 10. Imperial Physician Xiao looked at the recipe in her hand and sighed. After all, it was a recipe made with human lives, and the Lu family has saved countless lives. Therefore, even if the descendants are unworthy, when there are times when they can't follow, this recipe is there. Lu family has always had a place in Xinglan. This is Xiuyin, and it is also the realm that Xiao Tei Lu Tei and others aspire to achieve. Dr. Lu has had acne, but you and Zheng have not. Smallpox likes to find young children and weak people. Zheng's doctor is in his prime and his health is good, but you are young. I heard that you learned medicine because you were not in good health since you were young. Man Bao was indeed frail since childhood, she nodded. Dr. Xiao sighed, then you have to be careful. Man Bao said solemnly, I will be careful. By the way, Dr. Xiao, I was just about to tell you that few of our doctors have acne, and we have the most contact with patients during treatment, so we must take some precautions. She took it out in her sleeve pocket and took out a sealed piece of cloth to show him. This is for face covering, it's called a mask, and I will ask the Ministry of Household to allocate funds to the Ministry of Work to make some. This is what teacher Mo found out for her last night. In addition to this, there is also a whole set of protective clothing, including masks, gloves, goggles and so on. He said that this is the most commonly used thing for epidemic prevention. It was invented in ancient times, but it is still in use now. It is just that through continuous improvement, the current protection effect is better than before, and it is lighter and thinner. However, the characteristic of protective clothing is that it is not breathable, and now an internal circulation system is added at most. Man Bao thought it was enough to use an air purifier similar to Mingda's, but after asking, he found out that ordinary people can use this to isolate 90% of the virus infestation, but doctors can't. Because of their work, they are likely to have direct exposure to the virus. Teacher Mo also knows that there are many things in her world, so she just found the most basic version that she can find now, and let her see what things in her world can be used, because in addition to her, that world must also be used. There are many doctors. Not to mention taking care of so many healers, she had a hard time finding an excuse to wear these things herself. Man Bao rummaged through and found that only masks can be made by them, and things like gloves are impossible in a short time, because that material is not available in this world. Even the mask is different. Now she uses gauze layer by layer to sew it on the cotton cloth, and she doesn't know how effective it will be. Who knew that Imperial Physician Xiao said after touching it, "This gauze is cheap, but this cotton is expensive. I'm afraid it will be difficult. How about using linen instead?" The gauze used by Manbao is commonly used by their doctors for bandaging. The holes are large and sparse, so it is still cheap on the market, but cotton is expensive. Imperial Physician Xiao touched it carefully, but it was still a fine cotton cloth, so it was even more expensive. Manbao hesitated for a moment and said, "It should be fine, but cotton should be the best. It uses less material. If you ask the Ministry of Household to allocate more money, you can make a lot of them with one piece of cloth." "I'll go back and talk to Imperial Physician Lu, but it may not work," said Imperial Physician Xiao. "Yesterday the Ministry of Housing delivered the medicinal materials, and today the last one was delivered. Imperial Physician Lu is taking someone to count them." The Ministry of Household inquired about it. "They directly bought 3 times the amount of medicine according to the medicine list. Yesterday, there were already drugstores that raised their prices. Mentioned more than twice as much as before." He said, "The Ministry of Household will definitely interfere, but according to the rules of this dynasty, the government decree does not allow business affairs. The Ministry of Household has to stabilize the price of medicines and have to buy medicinal materials from other places to fill the market. Yesterday evening, the Zhou of the Ministry of Household. I took people to the south. This is to go to other places to buy medicinal materials, and the next cost will only be more. With the urine of the household, they will definitely break a penny into 2 half flowers, let alone some muslin cloth. I am afraid it will be gauze too. You have to work hard to get it." Manbao understood, nodded, and said, "Then take this mask and pass it on to the imperial doctor and medical assistant in the imperial hospital. If this side of the capital, also tell the doctor in the city, if the Ministry of Household does not allocate money, you can make some at home, as long as you wash it properly." Dr. Xiao took it down. Manbao stayed in the imperial hospital until noon, and finally waited for the arrival of Imperial Physician Lu, who went to count the medicinal materials and others. She took out the recipes she had written down on her hand and circulated them to everyone. Everyone has read it, and although these recipes are not as good as the one of Imperial Physician Lu, several of them are very simple and can be spread out, and some poor people can use them at home. The recipes are not difficult. After everyone has circulated them, most people have memorized them. If they don't remember them, just copy them. Man Bao put away the manuscript and went to discuss the time to leave the city tomorrow with Imperial Physician Lu Zheng. "Let's go as soon as the city gate opens," said Imperial Physician Lu. "The Imperial Guard is also ready, and they will give us a ride." Man Bao was puzzled. "Why do you still need the Imperial Guard to send it? Aren't the Yamen and officials of the Ministry of Household escorting the medicinal materials?" Imperial Physician Lu said, "The guards will follow Yongzhou, and they will block the road from the north." Man Bao understood, and went home after confirming the time to leave the city tomorrow. Imperial Physician Lu and Imperial Physician Zheng also went home. They finally had a reunion dinner with their families tonight. When he returned to Zhou Mansion, he saw Yin. He was sitting in the study drinking tea, and when he heard the movement, he raised his head, and when he saw Zhou Man, he smiled slightly. "As soon as you leave, the needle I pierce every fortnight can still be used." Ja. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2067. Man Bao said, "You can go to the hospital to find Zhenggu, and he can pierce you." Yin Or shook his head and said, "Forget it, I'll wait for you to come back and pierce it, I'm not used to others." Hearing this, Bai Shan raised his head from the teacup, looked at Man Bao and said, "You are used to it." Yin Or smiled and asked, "When will you leave tomorrow?" "I'll see you off." Man Bao said, "You have to leave before dawn. That's when the yin is at its peak, and it's cold again, so don't come here." Bai Shan also said, "When we get sick, we may not feel at ease when we leave." Yin He was silent for a while, then sighed after a while, and finally agreed. Both Man Bao and Bai Shan breathed a sigh of relief. Yin He looked around and asked, "Where's Bai Er?" Man Bao also looked at Bai Shan. "Bai Shandao," he said that he didn't know if he would be able to come back during the Chinese New Year, so he went to Zhao Liaolang. Last time Zhao Liaolang lost a bet with him, and he agreed to invite him to have a drink from the Zhuangyuan building. By the way, remind Zhao Liaolang not to forget the debt between them. Well, the two of them were silent for a while. Bai Erlang came back in the evening with a round stomach, and he couldn't even eat dinner. He also took 2 Xiaoshi pills with Man Bao, so that he could sleep well. It was just before dawn that he stood up against the cold air. He sat on the bed with the quilt wrapped around him, and his servant put out the clothes he was going to wear while saying anxiously, "Second young master Tang is getting dressed." After a while, he said, "Second young master Tang has made hot water and is already washing." Second young master Tang came out to pour water. He seems to be wearing shoes and socks. Bai Erlang just gave up the quilt on his shoulders and reached for the clothes. He didn't understand why he insisted on following them to Xiaohu 2 days ago. In fact, it's okay for him to worry in the capital. After Bai Erlang got dressed, he snorted casually with a towel, sat on the stool and let the boy comb his hair, then shrank his neck and went to the front to have breakfast. Most of the Zhou and Bai families followed. When he got to the front, Bai Shan and Man Bao were already sitting and eating breakfast. Seeing him appear, the two of them waved together, and Bai Dalan sat on the side and said, "Let him go to Xiaohu to listen to Lord Yang's orders, don't run around, don't make trouble." Bai Erlang was still a little confused, so these words didn't enter through his ears. At most, he circled around his ears and was blocked by his head. He just felt that he didn't hear anything clearly. He didn't wake up until he went out and got on the horse, and the cold wind blew in his face. As soon as he lowered his head, he saw his cousin, Aunt Zheng, and eldest brother looking up at them worriedly. Bai Shan and Man Bao waved goodbye to the family and were about to leave. Bai Dalan also looked at Bai Erlang and sighed, "Erlang, you have to take care." Bai Erlang nodded somewhat moved, and followed Bai Shan and Man Bao with his whip. Daji and other guards rode on horseback, and the driver of the car followed. When they arrived at the gate of the city, it just so happened that Imperial Dr. Lu and the others who had just arrived heard the sound of horse hooves, opened the curtain and looked outside, and saw Zhou Man coming with a large group of people. With only one entourage, Imperial Physician Lu and Imperial Physician Zheng. Even the adjutant of the Praetorian Guards who was ordered to escort them looked at them in surprise. As the person in charge of this trip, Imperial Physician Lu couldn't hold back from getting out of the carriage, and looked at Zhou Man dissatisfied. "Dr. Zhou, why did you bring so many people?" Man Bao said, "They are all here to help." Imperial Physician Lu frowned, "How can they help?" Man Bao said, "I'm responsible for them, so don't worry Dr. Lu, they won't cause us any trouble." Imperial Physician Lu's gaze shifted from Bai Shan and Bai Erlang to the guards and carriage behind them, and found that they had loaded a carriage with all their things, and a blue cloth carriage, apparently for them. In addition to the 2 coachmen, there were also 3 guards, which meant that Zhou Man alone took 7 people. Imperial Physician Lu slapped his cheeks, threw down the curtain and went back to the car, and the voice came out, "Tian Physician Zhou can take it with him if he wants, but don't blame me for not reminding you, smallpox doesn't have eyes. If these people haven't had acne, going there is no different than going there. You will die. Also, we are marching in a hurry, so don't delay the journey." Man Bao hurriedly said, "It won't drag on the schedule. Not to mention that these 5 people are all guards, even Man Bao and the others will not slow down the journey. It's really a rush to march." As soon as they meet, everyone starts to go out of the city, and then the carriages and horses start to run. The mules behind them are all good quality mules, which have enough speed and endurance. At noon, the group just stopped to eat a simple meal of dry food, without even burning the water. It took less than 2/4 of an hour from stop to departure, which was the most urgent journey for the 3 of Manbao. But after running for a long time, Manbao still felt slow, mainly because the speed of the car and the horse was still a little bit slower. She simply stopped the carriage, changed her horse and ran to the window of Imperial Dr. Lu's car. After knocking on it, she faced the cold wind and said to him, "Dr. Lu, let's go on horseback first. Let the medicinal materials stay later." Imperial Physician Lu looked at her, then at his old arms and legs, and waved, "If you want to go, go first." It is impossible for him to ride a horse. If he rides a horse, he is afraid that he will fall ill before he reaches Xiaoshu. Man Bao felt regretful and went to see Imperial Dr. Zheng. Imperial Dr. Zheng hesitated for a while, but also refused. In such a cold day, he did not want to ride a horse. So Man Bao turned around and pulled her people and the carriage and horses to the side and stopped. She directly let the 2 carriages follow the convoy, and they took the 3 guards of Daji first. The group opened the suitcase, took out the simple package that had been packed earlier, brought some dry food, put on a cloak, and wrapped the neck with a scarf. Manbao even took out a mask, handed it to them one by one, and then said, let's go to Xiaoshu quickly, and strive to arrive within 5 days. It's not easy to plan an 8-day itinerary to run 5 days. Daji frowned, but Manbao said, I have a warrant from the Imperial Hospital, and I can change horses when I arrive at the station. She touched her beloved Chiji and said, when they arrive at the inn, they will bring the 3 Chijis to Xiaoshu. Bai Shan touched the purse subconsciously, do we have enough money? If we let them take away the horses we replaced, they will ask for a deposit. Manbao waved his hand boldly, I brought it. Bai Shan looked at Manbao's purse, does she have so much money on her? Manbao did not explain too much, left a letter to the 2 coachmen, and after making an appointment with them to change the horse, he carried his luggage and mounted the horse. The 3 quickly rushed to the front convoy with 3 guards. He knocked on the window of Imperial Dr. Lu's car and shouted, Dr. Lu, I have given you 2 coachmen and 2 cars. You can help me take care of them. We will wait for you in Xiaohu. When Imperial Physician Lu saw that she really ran away, he was furious, but he still had to lift the curtain and call an accompanying medical assistant, follow up quickly, wait for us in Xiaohu, keep an eye on her, don't let her give it to her. We are too bad for the hospital. The medical assistant responded and hurriedly chased after him. This year is a special year, but the birthday of the motherland is still to be celebrated. I wish our mother health, prosperity, and we will overcome the difficulties of this year together. Come on. Next chapter around 9 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2068. A group of 7 rushed to Xiaohu, because they did not rest, and they spared no effort to bypass Yangzhou City, and Shen Shi arrived at the post. Man Bao and the others stopped, went directly to the post station to replenish dry food and hot water, and then continued their journey. The post chief saw that they were about to leave, and hurriedly said, "It takes a day to run from here to the next post station. If you leave, you can miss the end of the night." Man Bao said, "We found a village shop on the way to stay." "What if I miss the village?" Yi Cheng said, "Sir, it's not Xiaohu now, and if you sleep outside at this time, you will freeze to death." Man Bao looked at Daji. After calculating the schedule, Daji decided, "You can find a place to settle in the village." Man Bao thanked Yi Cheng for reminding him and left with someone. Yu Chen watched them run away, and couldn't help frowning. The people in the Thai hospital are working, why are they so anxious? The 7 people in Manbao continued to run until it was getting dark before they could hear the barking of dogs. Daji dismounted and lit a torch, followed the sound and walked down the path, and a quarter of an hour later, he saw the village with lights on. Man Bao and the others restrained the horse beside him, and the medical assistant looked cold. "Looks like there are only 2 lights." Bai Shan glanced at him and said, "It means that this village is not too small, let's go." "Only 2 lights are not too small?" The medical assistant followed them forward in confusion. Only after entering the village did he understand what Bai Shan meant. It was already dark, but some houses could barely be seen in the moonlight. There are still many found, but the lights are not on. There are people who have dogs in the village. They barked loudly as soon as they entered the village, and even the chickens cooed loudly. The originally quiet village suddenly became lively. Daji went directly to the house that could light the lamp. Coincidentally, it was the village chief's house. So Man Bao and the others moved in with a bunch of money. 100 cents for 2.5 rooms, plus hot water and some ordinary food, is still very cost-effective. Man Bao lives with their granddaughter, so it's 2.5 rooms. Man Bao said to Daji, "Let them boil a pot of ginger soup, and everyone will dissipate the cold." Daji responded, took out a piece of ginger from the bag, and took a piece from a square piece of brown sugar and handed it to the host. The host was stunned for a moment, and hurried over to cook it. When Man Bao was drinking the soup, Bai Shan had already communicated with the village chief, and he turned his head and said to Man Bao, "Shangguan Road is not far from here, we should get up early tomorrow, and we should be able to get to the next station around the time. When we get to the 3rd post, our horses will have to be changed." Man Bao understood that with such a high-intensity journey, the horses would definitely be damaged. In order not to affect the next journey, they had to be replaced. Not only horses, but people are tired too. Man Bao took out a jar of ointment from the bag and handed it to Bai Shan, "You can wipe it at night." Bai Shan did not refuse and took it. The 7 stayed in the village for 1 night, got up before dawn the next day, asked the village chief to prepare a breakfast meal, and changed a lot of white steamed buns for dry food, and then set off. When they got on the official road, it was a little brighter, and they could barely see the road. There was no one on the official road, and the 7 people let the horses gallop on the official road with confidence. As soon as they left, the village chief glanced at the 30 pennies in his hand, and after collecting them, he turned around and said to his family, "Don't go to the county town recently, and don't go to crowded places. If there are passers-by from the north, try your best to do it. Don't stay overnight." His eldest son asked, "Why?" "I don't know," the village chief said confidently. "The noble did not say the reason, just let us go to the lively places when we have nothing to do." The group finally arrived at the third post station before dark. The horses were almost tired and fell down, and Man Bao and the others almost lost their stability. Thing. Man Bao took out a gold ingot, 10 taels, and her official seal and documents from the Taiyuan hospital were there, so Yuchen promised to change horses for them, and the documents were also prepared. Because Man Bao is an official, and this time he is on business again, so he does not need money for accommodation and food. The next day when it was still dark, I got up and had breakfast, and then set off with the dry food prepared by the inn. The postman watched them leave sleepily, finally believing that they were in a hurry. Going out on business in such a cold place, or such a rush, is really short-lived. Sure enough, it is not so easy for a high-ranking official to do it. In this way, they rushed slowly, and changed horses 3 times in the middle, and they finally approached Xiaoshu on the 5th day. As soon as they approached Xiaoshu, they noticed it, because there was no car going north on the official road. Occasionally, they would encounter a car coming from the same direction. Cars and people who just walk away. It was getting dark, and they hadn't even seen the city yet. Daji's eyes swept away and saw that there were only 3 people facing each other on the official road. It seemed that they were a family of 3. A young man led an old woman and a young woman and pushed on a scooter, with a backpack and luggage on his back. Daji stepped forward to stop the group and asked, "How far is it from Xiaoshu city?" The people who were stopped looked at them in surprise. "Are you going to Xiaoshu city?" "Xiaoshu city can't be entered, there is an epidemic there, and it has been sealed, so let's go." Daji said, "We know that I am going to Xiaoshu city for business, but it is getting dark now, and I don't know how far I have to go to get to Xiaoshu city." The man glanced at their tall horse, stepped back a little, blocked the family behind him and said, "Also, it's not very far. If you ride horses, it should be there in about 2 hours." Man Bao looked at them condescendingly on his horse, glanced over their scooters, and asked, "Are you from Xiaoshu city?" "No," the man eagerly denied, perhaps realizing that he was in a hurry, and then said after a pause, "Our family is nearby, and now we are not making a good living. We are going to the children's grandfather's house to seek a living." Man Bao looked at him for a while, and finally got off his horse, stepped forward and glanced at the scooter, and reached out his hand to lift the quilt. The man quickly grabbed her hand. "What are you doing?" Daji immediately stepped forward and grabbed his hand, pressing, "Let go." Man Bao stared at him and said, "I'm a doctor." The man stood in front of the scooters to keep them from moving. Man Bao motioned for Daji to let go of his hand. Bai Shan touched the bag, took out Man Bao's official seal, and stepped forward. "We belong to the Thai hospital, are you sure you won't let us take a look?" The man was astonished and glanced at Guan Yin. He didn't know him. But his eyes slid over their clothes and the tall horse behind him, and then looked at their temperament, hesitantly released Man Bao's hand, and stood a little to the side, but still looked at them warily. "I wish you all a happy Mid-Autumn Festival, happiness and well-being." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2069. The old lady and the young woman on the side also watched them warily, but when Man Bao went to lift the quilt, he hesitated for a while and still did not stop him. The quilt was lifted, and inside was a shivering little girl with pimples all over her face. Daji and the others were startled, and Chi-Chi took 2 steps back. Man Bao was also startled, put down the quilt, took out the mask from his pocket and put it on, and then lifted the quilt again to check the little girl's condition. She was still feverish, not only on her face, hands, and feet, but also on her chest and abdomen. Manbao had never seen so many pimples on a single person when she was so old. After careful inspection, she got up and said to the young man, "It's getting dark, do you want to sleep in the rough?" The young man said alertly, "We will build a fire to keep out the cold." Manbao said to Daji, "Let's stay here for one night, you should stay away while wearing masks, I'll take a look at her symptoms. Daji and others should go down and arrange a place to sleep." The young man's family stayed half suspecting and half expectant. Manbao opened the bag, but she still had some medicinal herbs on her body. She grabbed a pair of medicine under consideration, and then gave it to the woman to boil the medicine. Bai Shan went to pick up firewood with the young men of their family. When they came back with 2 bundles of firewood, the young man had already trusted Bai Shan, and he knew everything he could say. According to him, his name is Wu Xiang, and his family does live in a nearby village, not very far from Xiaoshu city. Half a month ago, Xiaoshu city was suddenly closed. It was said that there was an epidemic in the city, and things outside the city could be sent in, but things in the city could not be sent out, nor people. Wu Xiang wiped it. Tears said, "Our family lives in a village not very far on the outskirts of the city. We heard that there was a shortage of vegetables in the city, so we sold the cabbage stored in our cellar and handed it in from the city gate. I thought it was just selling some vegetables and it should be fine, but who would have known that the child suddenly had a fever 5 days ago, and then started to have acne. There is an announcement in the city that if some people outside the city are also infected with smallpox, if there are too many people in a village, the village will be closed, if there are not many people, they will have to move to the city. How dare she go into the city alone, but the village can't hold us anymore, so we can only come out." Bai Shan asked, "Where can you go?" Wu Xiang glanced at his wife and said, "We want to go to Dahang County. My father-in-law's family is there, and the city hasn't been closed yet. We want to take the child to find a doctor, maybe we can save it." Bai Shan asked indifferently, "Smallpox is an epidemic disease, which is extremely contagious. Even your village and clan can't take you in. Can your father-in-law take you in?" And the smallpox epidemic spread. As soon as these words came out, Wu Xiang looked at him cautiously, Do you want to arrest us?" Bai Shan shook his head, looked at him with a look of sympathy, and said, "We just came from Dahang County, you probably don't know that a forbidden army has been dispatched from the capital. Not only Dahang County has also been closed, but also the prefectures and counties to the south and west. The roads are all blocked, and those who go south now either avoid the mountains and forests, or turn back to Xiaoshu, but they are walking, so they are not so fast." Wu Xiang exclaimed, "Impossible." "What's impossible?" Bai Shan said, "The capital is full of nobles, and there are more than 1 million people there. Do you know how many people are more than 1 million? Wu Xiang's eyes widened. Bai Shan said, "The 10 people from Xiaoshu combined are not as many as Chang'an. As long as one case of smallpox patient enters, more than 1 million people may be infected with smallpox, so the court attaches great importance to this, and has already given the way to it." Sealed. Facing Bai Shan's dull gaze, Wu Xiang had no choice but to believe it. He couldn't help crying, "The court is making us die." The old woman and the woman also came out of grief and cried aloud. "Manbao and Bai Erlang, it sounds like it's true." Bai Shan said solemnly, "So here we are." Wu Xiang looked at them, 16 or 17-year-olds, "What's the use of them coming?" Bai Shandao, "We are all from the Taiyuan Hospital, and behind us are the convoys of the Imperial Army and Taiyuan Hospital." Wu Xiang and his mother and wife couldn't help but turn to look at Guandao. Bai Shan sighed and said, "Don't look at it, we are young, so we left quickly, and we only ran from the capital to this place in 5 days. The imperial doctor who stayed behind was old and brought several carts of medicinal materials. Even if there is a large army escort, it will not be able to go fast, it is estimated that it will take 3 or 4 days to arrive. He calmed his face and said, the magistrate Yang of Xiaosu has written to ask for help. Your Majesty cares about the people in the epidemic area, and ordered the household department to buy a large amount of medicinal materials. Now the first batch of medicinal materials is coming with the imperial doctor, and there are more to come. He looked at the trolley and said in a low voice, I told you this in advance when I could talk to my brother. These medicinal materials are for the relief of the people in the epidemic area. You can still receive free medicines when you stay in Xiaosu City. You can see the imperial doctor, but continue to the south, let alone see the doctor, you can't even enter the city, and without the local household registration, the county town will not be able to accept you. Do you have to live in the open air? The fire had already started, and it wasn't so cold anymore, so Man Bao had someone push the trolley to the side of the fire, and then stabbed her a few times with a needle, so that she could get a little bit of the heat away, so that it wouldn't be too uncomfortable. But she didn't dare to give her fever-reducing medicine, because smallpox had to be released before it could be cured. If it was covered, it would be fatal. She no longer cared about Bai Shan, who was still fooling people, but rolled up her sleeves and looked at her pimples carefully. After a while, she found a pimple that she had torn apart. It should be that she couldn't help rubbing it. Her wrists were tied before, probably because she couldn't help scratching. Finding this frayed pimple, Man Bao took a piece of white paper and carefully took out the pimple with a needle. The old woman and the woman on the side stared blankly, not knowing what she was doing. Man Bao left with this piece of paper, on the pretext of studying the acne so that people should not get too close, then sent the paper to the teaching room, sent it directly as a teaching material, and then asked Keek to contact Mr. Mo desperately. Teacher Mo, who was sent 7 reminder messages in a row, silently looked up from a pile of books, received her pathogen, and went offline for research. There is no need to find other research institutes for this kind of thing, he can find the order in his own small research room. At night, the little girl couldn't help crying. It was so itchy that she couldn't stand it. The old woman and the woman could only hold her hand to comfort her constantly, and they couldn't help crying when they saw her being so uncomfortable. Man Bao was picking and choosing among the bags, and finally got together a pair of medicines. After boiling, let them warm, and then let them scrub her with gauze dipped in the medicine. It's just barely stopping the itching, and it also has the effect of shedding rashes, but I don't know what the effect is, you can try it. She looked at the two of them, frowned and found 2 masks for them. It's better to talk than nothing. You haven't had acne, have you? The two took it with great gratitude and put it on as they did. Although they didn't know what was the use, the nobles and imperial physicians did this, so it should be useful. See you tomorrow. Flower, happy. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2070. Man Bao washed his hands and changed his clothes outside before sitting by the fire, but he was 3 feet away from Bai Shan and Bai Erlang. Bai Shan, who wanted to whisper to her, was held down by her eyes. He could only crouch on the other side of the fire and said, "Okay, let's go tomorrow morning." Man Bao nodded. There were more patients waiting for her in Xiaosu City. It was impossible for her to stay here for a patient. Besides, she didn't have much medicine on hand. According to what Mr. Mo said, if the speed is fast, there should be a conclusion before noon tomorrow, and it will be known soon if there are ready-made vaccines. After a night, Man Bao was pushed awake by Bai Shan. She stuck her head out of the quilt and saw the bright morning star in the sky as soon as she opened her eyes. Bai Shan said, "There is light in the sky, get up." Man Bao responded and got up to take a shower. The guards took out the hard steamed buns and distributed them to the crowd. Man Bao took one, put the steamed buns at a distance from them and roasted them by the fire, and ate them with boiling water. Bai Erlang said while eating, "It's been one night, you don't need to be so far away from us, right?" Man Bao wiped his mouth with a handkerchief, put the mask back on after eating, and said slowly, "Do you know how long the smallpox virus can be stored in the dusty bedding?" "How long?" "Half a year to a year." Bai Erlang and everyone. "It's not afraid of the cold or the heat, so you'd better be careful." One of the guards couldn't help but ask, "Isn't smallpox infiltrating the body? What is a virus?" Man Bao paused and said, "It's a poisonous disease." She was an imperial physician, and everyone believed what she said without even thinking about it. The guards suddenly realized, it turns out that smallpox is poisonous, no wonder it is so powerful. "Man Baodao, so you better be careful when you arrive in Xiaohu city, wash your hands frequently on weekdays, wear a mask, and try not to touch your nose and mouth." She warned a lot, and the guards all listened carefully. After eating, it was almost dawn, and everyone packed up and left. Man Bao gathered the last medicine on his body and gave it to Wu Xiang's family, and said, "I only have this last medicine on me, because the medicinal materials are limited, so the medicine given to her is not good. I see that the pimples on her body are all it is sent out, but the temperature is not very high. As long as the medicine is used properly, you should be able to live. If you insist on going south, we will not advise you much. Although you may encounter many people along the way, you will not be able to enter the city gate. The number of people is also limited." Man Bao paused and said, "Forget it, let's go with you." Bai Shan only nodded to them and mounted his horse, not forcing them to return to Xiaohu city. Wu Xiang's family was tense, and they relaxed when their horses had disappeared. They are still a little unbelievable, so they just let them go. The Wu Xiang family looked at each other, and the woman couldn't help but ask her father, "What should we do?" Wu Xiang looked at the road ahead, then looked at the road, and finally gritted his teeth, "Let's go to Yu's house first. But from here to Daheng County, it's not far from riding a horse, and it takes half a day to arrive, but it takes at least a day to walk." Wu Xiang poured medicine on his daughter, pushed his scooter and led his wife and mother forward, but after walking for more than an hour, there was no one on the road. The spacious official road seemed to be the same as the family of four. No matter how far they went, they were empty, and even the time was stretched infinitely. After walking for more than an hour, it was as difficult as walking for 3 or 4 hours. The woman was very frightened. "Dad, if Daheng County is locked down as the adults say, and we can't get in at all, wouldn't the past 2 days be in vain? It's so cold, Diakin, can you survive it?" The old woman reached out and touched the child, and she hesitated. "Son, when I touched Daya, it was not so hot. The medicine given by the female imperial doctor last night also worked. She is not so itchy. Why don't we go back? If we go to Daheng County and are stopped, we won't be able to hire a doctor. You have to watch the doctor take medicine." The woman nodded again and again, and she was also very anxious. The child had already had smallpox, and she couldn't really take the child to live with her parents. Her brother and sister-in-law also have children. What if they infect the family? Wu Xiang was also hesitant. He stopped and looked at the road ahead. After waiting for a long time, no one was coming. When he looked back, there was no one on the road. He was even more uncertain. It was really possible to go to Daheng County. "Do you see the doctor?" Bai Shan and the others were speeding on the official road. Bai Erlang couldn't help asking Bai Shan loudly, "Are they really coming back?" Bai Shan said with certainty, "They will. They don't know if Daheng County is really blocked, and we are officials and come from the capital. They can't help but believe us. As long as they don't encounter people from the north on the road, they will turn around. But at this time, everyone avoided Xiaohu city like snakes and scorpions. Who else would come here except those who had to come for official business? If they came across people who came to Xiaohu city on business, they would go out with smallpox patients, not to mention being caught and killed on the spot. The group galloped and saw the city in just over an hour, and naturally also saw the fence and people blocking the city. Before Bai Shan and the others ran, they restrained the horse. There are only 2 yamen guarding the fence, and no one has come to Xiaohu city during this time, so there are only 2 yamen guards who stop people from entering the city, but there are many people who stop people from leaving the city. Seeing the 7 horses galloping towards them, the 2 put their hands on the knives and watched them warily. Man Bao consciously had poison on his body, so he always fell behind them when riding horses. Bai Shan and De Ji arrived first, and De Ji took Man Bao's doorpost and the documents from the Thai hospital to negotiate. Man Bao restrained the horse, sat on the horse, closed his eyes and sank his consciousness into the system. Keek communicated with her within half an hour. Mr. Mo sent an email. Because it was on the horse, Man Bao didn't go to see it in person, but asked Keek, what did he say? The data came out. There is a vaccine that can prevent and cure it, but it can't completely prevent it. It has only 89% control effect. There is a set of data on the smallpox virus that is relatively special, but Mr. Mo said that its transmission is not strong. Man Bao asked, are vaccines expensive? Keek looked at the prices on the mall, and compared the prices in the encyclopedia, and said, it's not expensive. This is a vaccine against an R virus that was developed 30 years ago, but Mr. Mo uses the encyclopedia. Do you want to buy the drugs in the mall or the encyclopedia? Of course, the encyclopedia bought it. Man Bao asked, how much? 150 points, but plus the technology tax, 1050 points are needed. If you buy a lot, the price will go up by 10% for every 10 more you buy. Man Bao, she knows that the encyclopedia is different. In reality, the more you buy, the cheaper it is, but the encyclopedia is not. As long as there is a technology tax product, whether it is an encyclopedia or a product in a shopping mall, the more you buy, the more expensive it will be, and you can't buy it in batches. After watching the news all morning, I was really surprised, but it seems to be reasonable, ha 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 ha. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2071. Knowing that the rules cannot be changed, Man Bao didn't hesitate and asked directly, what's the base? 10. Then come 10 first. Man Bao asked, is there enough stock? Keek answered and explained, enough. When Man Bao heard this, she was relieved, so she immediately asked Keek for 10 pieces. She heard the sound of jingle bells in her ear, and she knew that the deduction was successful. After a while, there was another jingle bell, and I knew that something had arrived. So when she got to the foot of the city gate, she closed her eyes and went in to read the instructions. Scanning at a glance and 10 lines, this thing is enough to eat into the stomach. It will take effect after half an hour to 2 hours. If the detection value does not meet the standard within 2 hours, Man Bao directly omits it. That is the rule for people in that world. She went straight to the doctor's order given to her by Teacher Mo. Teacher Mo's doctor's order was very detailed, just eat it. If you feel dizzy, nauseated or have a fever within half an hour, you should take it. If there is no abnormal situation within 2 hours, then it will be fine. There is an 89% probability. Don't be too rash. Man Bao remembered it in her heart, and as soon as she thought about it, there was an extra handful of pills in her hand in her sleeve, all wrapped in paper. She glanced down at the paper was familiar, and when she opened the paper, the pills were round and white. It was very similar to the candy pills she had eaten before. Man Bao looked left and right, and saw that everyone was looking at Bai Shan and Daji, who were talking to the yaman in front of him. He squeezed one and put it in his mouth. He was about to drink water and give it away, but the mouth was slightly sweet, with only a faint medicinal smell. After only one bite in the mouth, it turned into sugar water and all entered the stomach. Manbao smashes its mouth. I feel that this medicine almost feels like it. Then envy, if all their medicines are like this. But doesn't the book say that good medicine is bitter? So sweet, can it really prevent smallpox? Manbao was suspicious in her heart, but she didn't move slowly. She took out a medicine bottle and carefully avoided the pills inside. She peeled off the paper and put it into the medicine bottle, and then kicked the horse's stomach lightly, causing the horse to walk to Bai Erlang. Beside him, motioning for him to reach out. Bai Erlang stretched out his hand in confusion. Isn't she not happy for them to approach her? Manbao poured a candy, medicine into his hand and said, "Eat it." Bai Erlang saw her holding the medicine bottle, and thought she was pouring medicine, but a familiar candy came out, and he threw it into his mouth, chewed it directly, and asked, "Why do you suddenly remember to give it to me? I eat candy? Hey, why is this candy different from what I used to eat before, and it tastes like medicine?" Manbayadao, the prevention and treatment of smallpox may not be useful, it is better than nothing. Bai Erlang, it's okay to be deceived. Manbao saw that he had eaten everything, so he dismounted to find Bai Shan and Daji. A yaman took Manbao's doorpost, turned around and ran into the city. Bai Shan turned around and said to her, "They have to report and they can only enter with permission." Manbao nodded and poured a candy in his palm. "Eat it." Bai Shan looked at the candy in his palm, then looked at her, and then ate it, and he also tasted the medicine in it. Manbao handed the medicine bottle to Daji and whispered, "You take one too, let each of them take one, and watch them eat it." Daji responded, "Although I also felt that the pill was too similar to the one I used to eat in Kilai village, but I still went." Bai Shan walked to Manbao and saw that she was not avoiding him, so he raised his eyebrows slightly, then lowered his voice and asked, "This is what he sent?" Manbao looked around and nodded. Bai Shan asked in a low voice, "Can it be cured?" Manbao shook his head, "It's just epidemic prevention." Bai Shan understood, that is to say, patients cannot be treated, only healthy people can be prevented, but this is also very good, as long as there are no new patients, then. Bai Shan asked in a low voice, "Is there a recipe?" Manbao whispered, "Even if there is a recipe, we can't make it. This kind of medicine is patented, let alone that she can't get it, even if teacher Mo researches it and doesn't mind giving her the recipe, she can't make it. Because, it's not made from traditional Chinese medicine." Manbao felt very regretful, the technology of the two worlds was too different, otherwise she could learn the pharmaceutical technology of that world. But she doesn't have the instruments of that world here, and she can't make it. Even if she pays the technology tax to get a set, it's useless, and it's useless to learn the technology that can't appear in this world above board. It's better to only know a thing or two, know what's going on, and then focus on the medical skills and medicines that she can use. Bai Shan didn't think that technically, he thought that the medicine used in this pill was not found in the mortal world, so there was no way. He sighed, "Then we can only figure out how to get pox." Manbao nodded, "I think so too." After a few words, Daji had already distributed the pills. He handed the pills to Manbao and said in a low voice, "There are 3 pills left." Manbao nodded and whispered to Bai Shan, "Wait to Brother Yang when we enter the city." Bai Shan nodded. Shuexiang Tang was worried about chaos in Xiaoshu before he came here, for fear that someone would be unfavorable to sister-in-law and brother Qi. But the pill is not 100% effective, only 89% effective, so be careful. So, only Bai Shan in the group knew the news, and everyone else thought it was better than nothing. Therefore, they were still cautious when waiting to enter the city, and the masks were always on their faces, fearing that some smallpox virus would take the opportunity to penetrate their noses and mouths. Bai Shan waited for a while, but when he saw that no one came, he went to talk to the yamen. Is it very far from here to the county government? Not far, it takes about 4/4 of an hour to go back and forth on horseback, not to mention that there are still many checkpoints in the city, especially when going out from the inside. Each checkpoint has to be checked for identity. The adults estimate that it will take an hour or so before Ro. So long? This was a bit beyond Man Bao and Bai Shan's expectations. Bai Erlang didn't sit down immediately, jumped down, and asked, then Swexian Yang, is the magistrate Yang sitting in the county government now? Nature. Bai Shan then asked, who is the magistrate of Yang and who is in charge of the city now? Master Yang and General Gong. Man Bao asked, did General Gong help Lord Yang to surround the governor's mansion? The officers speak. Bai Shan turned his head and said to her, Xiaohu is an important military town, and General Gong has been guarding Xiaohu city for 12 years. Before that, the Gong family was originally from Xiaohu city. He whispered, when the late emperor revolted, the Gong family took 800 soldiers under his command to seize Xiaohu city and surrendered. Man Bao understood that this General Gong was the biggest local snake in Xiaohu. No wonder Brother Yang was able to suppress the officials up and down Xiaohu. It turned out that he had his support. I don't know how Brother Yang persuaded General Gong. See you at 9.